He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. These words, found in John chapter 1:10, stand as a profound statement at the very beginning of the Gospel of John, encapsulating a mystery that has fascinated theologians, philosophers, and seekers of truth for centuries. This verse, layered with meaning, forms part of the prologue to John's Gospel, where deep theological truths are conveyed through poetic and evocative language. Understanding the meaning of John 1:10 requires us to dive into the context, the broader narrative, and the implications for both the ancient world and our own lives today. First, let's consider the immediate context. The Gospel of John opens not with a genealogy or a nativity story, as the other Gospels do, but with a majestic declaration of the Logos, the Word, that was with God and was God from the very beginning. This Word, John tells us, is the agent of creation, the light of humanity, and ultimately the one who comes into the world in human form, Jesus Christ. By the time we reach verse 10, John has already established that the Word is not a distant or abstract force, but intimately involved with all that exists. He was in the world. This phrase speaks to the presence of the Creator within his own creation. The world, in the language of John, is not just the physical earth, but the entirety of humanity and human experience. The Word, who is God, entered into the very fabric of the world he had fashioned. This is an act of divine humility, an unprecedented step in the story of God and humanity. The transcendent, unapproachable God steps into ordinary existence, walks among people, feels hunger and thirst, sorrow and joy. It is the mystery of the Incarnation, God becoming flesh. And though the world was made through him, these words affirm the creative role of the Word. In the opening verses, John has already proclaimed, "Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made." This means that everything that exists owes its being to the agency of the Word. Every star in the sky, every grain of sand, every breath we take. The Creator is not an absentee landlord, but the source and sustainer of all life. The universe bears the imprint of its maker, and every person carries echoes of the divine image. Yet, despite this intimate connection, the world being made through him, John delivers a shocking statement. The world did not recognize him. Here, the word recognize can be understood as know, acknowledge, or receive. The one through whom the world was made came into that world, but was met not with welcome or recognition, but with ignorance and rejection. This is not a mere failure of intellect, but a spiritual blindness. The world, in its brokenness and rebellion, failed to see the presence of its own Creator in the person of Jesus. This verse, then, is both a statement about history and a diagnosis of the human condition. When Jesus walked the earth, most people did not see in him the God who made them. They saw a carpenter's son, a rabbi, perhaps a prophet, but not the eternal Word. The religious leaders, steeped in the Scriptures, missed the fulfillment of their own prophecies. The crowds, seeking miracles and political liberation, failed to grasp the deeper significance of his presence. Even those closest to him struggled to understand who he truly was. But why did the world not recognize its Creator? The answer lies in the nature of humanity's estrangement from God. Since the earliest chapters of Genesis, the story of humanity has been marked by a turning away from God, a desire to define good and evil on our own terms, to seek autonomy rather than relationship. This alienation clouds our vision, distorts our understanding, and makes us prone to miss the divine even when he stands before us. John's statement is not only a reflection on the past, but a mirror held up to each generation. The tragedy of not recognizing the Creator is not confined to first-century Palestine. It is a recurring theme in every age. We live in a world that is saturated with signs of God's presence: beauty, order, love, conscience. Yet we often fail to see the one behind the gifts. We become preoccupied with our own pursuits, distracted by noise and busyness, skeptical of anything that challenges our autonomy. The Creator is present, but we do not know him. Yet, woven into this somber statement is also a message of hope. The very fact that the Creator entered into the world means that God has not given up on His creation. He comes not as a distant judge, but as a loving Redeemer. The rest of John's Gospel will unfold the story of how this Word who was not recognized will nevertheless persist in love, healing, teaching, and ultimately giving His life for the world. Reflecting further, John 1:10 invites us to ask, what does it mean to know the Creator? In the biblical sense, knowing is more than intellectual assent. It is relational, experiential, transformative. To know God is to enter into relationship, to open our hearts, to allow ourselves to be changed. Recognition is a matter of the heart as much as the mind. The tragedy John describes is not just a lack of information, but a closeness of heart. The Creator comes in humility, not overwhelming power, and so is easily overlooked by those who expect God to fit their own categories. This verse also highlights the humility of God. The Creator does not impose His presence with irresistible force, but comes gently, inviting rather than compelling. The Word becomes flesh, a vulnerable baby, a man from a small town, a teacher who serves and suffers. This is not the God of human expectation, but the God who surprises us with grace. In His humility, He gives space for genuine relationship, for freely given love. For the early Christian community, John's words would have been both a comfort and a challenge. Many of them faced misunderstanding, marginalization, and even persecution. To know that Jesus Himself was not recognized by the world would have given them solidarity with their Lord. It would also have challenged them to be people who do recognize, who do not miss the presence of God in their midst. For us today, John 1-10 remains a call to attentiveness. Where is God present in our lives, our world, our relationships, that we might be overlooking? Are there ways in which we, too, fail to recognize the Creator, perhaps in the face of the poor, the stranger, the marginalized? Do we see the fingerprints of God in creation, in moments of beauty and wonder, or are we dulled by routine and cynicism? The verse also raises questions about the nature of revelation. God does not leave Himself without witness. Throughout history, God has revealed Himself in creation, in conscience, in the story of Israel, and supremely in Jesus Christ. The challenge is not that God is absent, but that we are often inattentive. The world is infused with hints of the divine, if only we have eyes to see. There is also a warning here. The failure to recognize the Creator leads to a distorted understanding of reality. When we detach ourselves from the source of life, we lose our bearings. The world becomes a place of confusion, fragmentation, and alienation. Much of the rest of John's Gospel will explore the consequences of this blindness, as well as the invitation to come into the light. Yet the story does not end with rejection. In the very next verses, John speaks of those who do receive Him, those who believe in His name. To them, He gives the right to become children of God. The failure of the world to recognize its Creator does not thwart God's purposes. There remains an open invitation, a possibility for new birth, for reconciliation, for transformation. In a broader sense, John 1:10 points to the paradox at the heart of Christian faith. The Creator comes to His creation, yet is hidden in plain sight. The infinite becomes finite, the all-powerful becomes vulnerable. This paradox is not something to be solved, but to be entered into with wonder and humility. It invites us to seek, to question, to open ourselves to mystery. John's Gospel, from beginning to end, is an invitation to see, to move from blindness to sight, from ignorance to knowledge, from alienation to relationship. The journey begins with the recognition that the Creator has come near, that God is not remote or indifferent, but present and seeking us out. The tragedy of not knowing the Creator is not the final word. The possibility of recognition remains open to all. In the end, the meaning of John 1:10 is both sobering and hopeful. It reminds us of the human tendency to miss what is most important, to overlook the presence of God in the ordinary. But it also holds before us the possibility of awakening, of coming to know the One who made us and loves us. The world did not recognize its creator, but the invitation to know him remains. As we ponder these words, we are invited into a deeper attentiveness, a greater openness, a willingness to be surprised by grace. The Creator is present in the world He made, reaching out to each of us. The question is, will we recognize Him? Will we open our eyes and hearts to the one who has come near? This verse, then, is not just a statement about the past, but a living question for each of us. In our own lives, in our own time, will we know the one who made us? Will we allow ourselves to be drawn into relationship with the Creator who became our Redeemer? The story of John's Gospel invites us to move from not knowing to knowing, from blindness to sight, from distance to intimacy. The Creator is here, the invitation is open, the rest is up to us.